Last night, the Calgary Police Service charged one of its members in connection with domestic-related offenses. On Monday, October 24th, our domestic conflict unit launched an investigation into a CPS member after the member's ex-spouse reported a domestic incident. The victim reported that a verbal altercation took place at a residence during which the member verbally threatened to assault the current boyfriend of the victim and attempted to force his way into the home. The member was in uniform and on duty at the time of the alleged incident. The victim also reported that she received 2 emails from the member and a verbal altercation with the member in a public location. So following the domestic conflict investigation, the member has been charged with the following: 4 counts of breach of probation, 1 count of uttering threats, 1 count of assault. To ensure transparency to the public, we're releasing the details about this incident. As this investigation stemmed from a domestic matter and to protect the welfare of the family involved, no names will be released to the service, by the service. The member with 16 years of service is currently on administrative leave, and his status will be continually reviewed. I will now take any questions you may have.
Can you just talk about any sort of additional concern that you might have about the officer being in uniform at the time?
Yeah, I think that will form part of the investigation. And it also will inform. What also will start here is a professional standard investigation. So we'll look into his behavior of what led into this domestic incident.
But I guess what I mean is, would that make it more egregious to you if that were to be true?
Yeah, and again, I have to say these are allegations, and they're before the courts. And also, I don't want to jump to any conclusions on this. It'll depend how our internal investigation goes. And we'll determine, maybe speak to that after, once we find out the exact evidence.
But this is information that police released to the public.
Correct.
The allegations of this officer being in uniform at the time. Would that be something more concerning to you, that somebody accused of doing this in uniform versus somebody accused of doing this off duty or not in uniform?
Yeah, again, I guess the piece I would have to say on this is we expect a high standard of our officers. There's no question, including myself. And again, with the allegations, and you know, when you go through investigations, you can't jump to conclusions. You have to allow that investigation to run its course. And at the point of time, once we find out exactly what occurred and what comes out from the courts, I would suggest at that time we could speak further to that.
This officer has 2 prior assault charges. Can you speak to, going forward, what might happen in terms of suspension, with pay, without pay?
Okay, and that'll be evaluated. And I want to make this very clear. So in this particular case, and let's jump right over to this piece regarding the probation charges. So when the domestic first came to light some time ago for us, the officer was released on what was called a conditional sentence. That does not have any conviction attached to that. And what actually what a conditional sentence is, it's similar. I could put similar to a peace bond. It comes in with, it has conditions on that. So as long as that particular individual or anyone member of the public, all right, adheres to that conditional sentence order, you're fine. Once you step outside of that, the actual charges then become probation, breach of probation charges. So it's under Section 730 of the Criminal Code. However, I have to really stress this, it is not a criminal conviction.
So this isn't his first time, the officer's first time getting in trouble. They broke those conditions. Doesn't that make it a little more problematic for you guys?
No, I think I better make sure that this is clear. So what happens is there was allegations some time ago. That went before the courts. This is a court-imposed sentence. So it's a conditional sentence imposed by the court, not by the police. And there was no convictions at that time. There was no admission regarding assault or convictions. So I think that's the piece that we have to be very careful here. I know it's somewhat complex piece of legislation, but what happens is once those conditions are breached under that conditional sentence, the appropriate charge is the breach of probation.
But I mean, you're not put on conditions if there's no sort of admission of wrongdoing.
Well, again, I've got to be careful not speaking to this, but I would disagree with that comment, because what happens is you can have conflict, and family family situations are very complex situations, as are a lot of, like you could have neighbor disputes, and it's not necessarily that anybody is agreeing or has done anything wrong. Sometimes what you do is you reach a crisis point, and then you say, you know, I've come to this crisis point, and I'm going to need some assistance getting through this crisis. So you agree to enter into a peace bond or a conditional sentence. And a lot of times what that'll have in there is, you know what, I'm going to agree to go to counseling, or I'm going to agree to handle my dispute mechanisms with you. So it's not saying necessarily that you've done anything wrong. It's actually what we like to have as police. So we're looking at potentially, right now we're at 20,000 domestic investigations that we've gone through this year in the Calgary Police Service. What's going on here is not untypical of many, many other situations of families that are in crisis, where they reach a crisis point, but we want to be able to come alongside the families and work with them. And sometimes that includes a peace bond, or it would include a conditional sentence order.
So I guess, but what I'm hearing from you is innocent until proven guilty. The uniform thing makes that part of the investigation, but like, is this not concerning for CPS that one officer has faced assault charges in 2 different incidents?
Again, well, I'm gonna go back to my original comments. Is that we've come forward with these allegations to make sure that we're transparent and we're showing accountability. But I think the officer has, like anybody else in Canada, has the right to have presumed innocence, and we have to be able to allow the investigations to occur, allow the court process to go before I start coming down and condemning anyone on that.
So let's say this, the first go-round, this officer continued to work. Now, as it stands, are you guys going to, as Megan asked before, I guess, clarify for us, is there going to be that suspension? Because it is the second time.
Well, that's certainly going to be looked at, all right? But we have processes that we have to go through. We're not going to jump to judgment here. There's processes that we have, and we're going to that will be looked at, no question.
But I'm hearing from you, you're not concerned until or unless he's found guilty. There's no concern from you at all.
Well, I think the piece of it right now, the officer's on administrative leave, and he has been charged. Okay, so as far as are you asking me, am I concerned other officers? Or are you asking me about the conduct of this particular officer?
I'm asking you if it's concerning to you that one officer has been charged in relation to 2 different incidents.
I think that any time that we have these allegations come forward, Megan, that there would be concerns, okay? What I'm saying is, though, is that we have to, from what we have as the Calgary Police Service, is that we can't rush to judgment, all right? And that we need to allow processes to be allowed to go through. And again, family situations are really complex situations. It's like not unlike, we're not immune to similar stresses and pressures of any other families in the city. And until those processes go through, okay, we can't rush to judgment or condemn.
In the release, you mentioned that two emails have been sent and a prior verbal altercation. Now, do any of these counts of the breach of probation relate to those incidences as well, or is this just from this most recent incident?
So it's just from this most recent incident. And what I can say to you is so there was, if you're asking, the date that's on here was the date that we became aware of the incident, and the issues occurred over a process of probably 3 to 7 days.
I see. So this incident happened prior to the date of the investigation, October 24th?
Correct. To the best of my knowledge, yes. Yeah.
And can you just clarify for me, these death threats, were they towards the ex-spouse or towards the ex-spouse's new boyfriend?
Okay, Jamie, I don't want to speak specifically to those charges at this point, okay? Because that's going to form part of the investigation, and it also now inside the court process. And I have to be careful. The reason I'm being careful with this is that it's like any in Canada, again, is the presumption of innocence that we have and the potential jeopardy that we have for the officer for a fair trial. And so I don't want to speak to that specifically at this point. It will come out in the court process, and that'll all be public record as this proceeds forward.
Can you speak to why it is so important to be transparent? It was even mentioned in the press release
Well, I think it has to do with public trust. So the police, as police, we're public servants, right? We are public servants. So a vast majority of our officers, they come in as recruits, they swear their oath, and they walk with integrity, valor, and courage through their entire careers. So right now, I'm in charge of patrol operations, so I have 1,100, 1,200 officers, plus I have another probably 500 civilian employees that are just as important. And we can only do our job if the public trusts us. If people have that ability to come forward and say, you know what, Calgary Police Service, you're keeping your house in order, you're doing everything, and we have to be transparent. And that's why we're coming forward with this. Normally, so those 20,000 complaints that we have every year with domestic conflict in the city of Calgary, we would not speak to this because of the nature and the sensitivity around families, right? And I need to speak to this too is, ideally, we don't want to ever have anyone charged with domestic assaults. And I'm going to clarify that. So I'm saying is we will attend those calls, but we want to try and get to families before they reach a crisis point and they end up with criminal charges inside the house. So I guess what I'm doing, so I know to my CPS family, and I have to worry about my officers that are on the street. There's no question about it. But I have families. I have families in the Calgary Police Service that I'm responsible for as well. And we want to make sure that if anybody's listening to me today, I don't care if you're sitting at home, if you're part of the CPS, Calgary Police Service, or if you're part of the Citizenship of Calgary, we want you to reach out and seek help for the families for crisis, because this is a difficult situation. They all are, and I don't want to leave here without somebody understanding that we are here to help. There's other agencies outside of the Calgary Police Service as well that can be reached out to and provide support.
In fairness to CPS, we are seeing some news releases on officers charged with offenses that you wouldn't normally send out if it was a civilian. Does this signal a culture shift at CPS?
Well, I think the chief's been very clear on this, is that we will be transparent. So I think that anyone that's sitting and watching and talking in this room now or at home is going to understand that we are prepared to have you look into our world and examine what we're doing. And when these incidents come, we will come forward and speak to them.
Is that something that was not going on before?
No, I think it was going on. I think it was going on before. I think that we're no question. I think with Chief Hansen and Chief Cook and now with Chief Chaffin, that we will be transparent when these incidents come forward. I think that just we've around the domestic situations now, we've talked about this, and we just believe that we need to make sure that this is put out in front of the public to make sure that we're transparent and accountable to the public.